Welcome in to another episode of Building the Pride. I'm your host, Drew. I'm flying solo again today, and we're going to do an episode tomorrow as well. But I thought that we should discuss the new offensive coordinator for the Lions, Drew. Great name, Petzing, I believe is how you say it. And I had some thoughts. Well, I have a lot of thoughts about it because as I change our banner here, I have some thoughts about it because I already have a comment. Lions new OC from. I will have to see what the comment is. Here we go. Oh, Donkey Kong. Hey, thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. You are also being a great follower, great subscriber. Extremely risky. Oh, let's talk about it. So we have hired Drew Petzing from the Arizona Cardinals. Now, his contract in Arizona was allowed to lapse, and so he is a free agent coach. And so the Lions interviewed, I believe I read 9 different candidates for their offensive coordinator position, including Drew Petzing. And what I thought was odd about the hiring was that there was an announcement that other candidates like Mike McDaniel, Zach Robinson, I think they even interviewed Arthur Smith about the OC position, and then a handful of other people who aren't Drew Petzing, but they did not announce that Petzing was coming in. And it sounds like they didn't even really let him out of the building. They hired him pretty quickly after the interview. And so I've read, 3 articles, I believe, and watched 3 hours worth of opinion about Drew Petzing. And I'm still very much unsure of what it means for the Lions now and I guess in the future. So I believe that the reason that the Lions hired him as quickly as they did after the interview was the fact that he comes from the Kevin Stefanski offensive tree, and Stefanski was hired in Atlanta and Petzing was quite high up on his list of possible OC candidates. Guy doesn't have a contract. You've worked with him before, you guys are familiar with one another. It makes a lot of sense. So I think that the Lions felt some pressure if they felt like this guy was the right fit, that they needed to sign him quickly. And because they interviewed him not late, but after so many other candidates, if they felt that he fit them the best of the people that they had talked to, I could understand wanting to move quickly to keep him in the building. Now, he's young. He's 38 for a offensive coordinator position. He has 3 years of calling plays in Arizona. And so some of the criticism I've heard is in Arizona, and I'm okay, I get it. The Cardinals are not great. So who is Drew Petzing? And I wish that I had some really fancy visual examples of who he is. And if you want some really good visual examples, my recommendation would be to check out all 22 films. They have done they did one video I watched where they were just giving their opinion. And then they have now put together a video of kind of what to expect from Drew Petzing when it comes to the Detroit Lions. And I think what you can expect is a return to a more power running style. I saw a graph or a chart that basically indicated that Petzing likes to use like 12 and 13 personnel. So, 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, as much, or I mean, top 5 as far as the number of formations. Yes. Oh, we could talk about that too, fan man, because it's up there for me. I think that you can expect a lot of heavy offensive line formations in the near future for the Detroit Lions, which to me screams David Montgomery. I think this move I don't think it was done to appease David Montgomery in any way, shape, or form. But I think that you can go back to David Montgomery and say, we're going to run the ball more. And there's going to be more opportunities for you. And we're going to run it out of a formation that's going to play to your strengths, right? Like, the thing that people don't seem to forget about David Montgomery is that when he was in college, he broke more tackles in his collegiate career than anybody had previously. And the person that broke his record for most broken tackles in a collegiate career was Bijan Robinson. So it's not like David Montgomery can't make somebody miss. That's one of the reasons that the Lions were interested in bringing him on. It's the same reason why they brought on other players too. Like, St. Brown gets open. Sam Laporta makes people miss. Trade Saints bitch ass for a tight end. Trade Saints bitch ass for a tight end. Who? Saints? St. Brown? I don't understand the post, Donkey Kong. Trade Saints for a tight end. I'm assuming it's a misprint. Help me out with this one, man. So let's see. I think what this is going to mean for the Detroit Lions is that they are going to invest very heavily in the offensive line and tight end positions in the offseason. So Detroit fan man, let's talk about your post here about a tight end. So where do we stand with our tight end room? So this year they basically lost 4 tight ends. They signed Kenny Yeboah to be like a run blocking tight end from the Jets in the offseason. He was hurt before the season started. We lost him. He never played a snap for us. Then Sam Laporta gets hurt pretty early in the season. He had a fully herniated disc in his back. That required surgery. The prognosis for him is that he should be up and around for OTAs and mini camps, and like, according to Dan Campbell, like getting up to running to speed, but this is I heard it was in his spine, where the disc was. I think that's where the discs, quote unquote, are. They're in your spine. And anytime you get a spinal injury, it's a real problem. It's a real big deal. Like, you can't mess around with that in particular. So we'll see what Sam Laporta is coming back. And then you have Brock Wright, who got knocked out due to the one of the ugliest sounding injuries I've heard of, which was he got punched in the throat, or hurt someone. Basically got chopped in the throat, and he was out with like a trach injury. Ugh, gross, so bad. So then you had Shane Zylstra, who was on and off the injured reserve list, and so you were playing with 3 third-string tight ends with Fursker, and I believe a guy named Ricci And I'll bring up the Lions roster here and I'll see if I can't find them. But like a bunch of guys that you would sign off of the street, for the lack of a better term, and they played like third string tight ends. Zach Horton, I think, was one of them. So I mean, like, I didn't think that they played poorly. Brock landed on his throat trying to jump over a tackle. Oh, Jesus Christ, really? Oh, Brock. This sounds awful. Okay, so to Detroit Fan Man's post. Should we draft a tight end? I think yes. So, like, how highly should you draft one? There is a tight end from Ohio State named Kazmarek, who looks just like an offensive lineman who can run a little bit. I mean, like, and if you're going to go 13 personnel, then, like, I mean, Sam Laporte is an above average blocker for a tight end. Like, he's quite good at it, and then if you put like Brock Wright out there and, draft like effectively like a hybrid tight end offensive lineman, and you're still playing an offensive line with Tate Ratledge, Penei Sewell, Christian Mahogany. These are big guys who can move people, and so last week, I did a mock draft where the Lions took Caden Proctor, who may not be there at their pick, to be honest. Enormous left tackle from Alabama, because I thought that it looks pretty likely that like Decker and Glasgow and Skipper retire. So you would need another very large investment in your offensive line to make up for the lack of those players. I don't want to hear like, oh, Graham Glasgow sucks. And Skipper, people are either love or hate on Skipper, but it's a lot of experience no matter how you slice it. And you can't make up for the experience with talent just all by itself. I mean, it's especially on the offensive line. It's the one group that needs the most continuity playing together on the entire football team. So I would be looking to try and sign a veteran center in free agency. My number one guy would be Connor McGovern from Buffalo, who it looks like, now that they've fired their coach and they're going to bring in a new bunch of guys, and with their cap situation, I wouldn't be surprised if Connor McGovern made it to free agency. If the pick at 17 isn't an OT, St. Brown's right, and I don't know about what did St. Brown say? So, I mean, if I don't listen to his podcast, mainly because I can't stand his brother, but if he said something like, we're going to have to take a tackle in round one, like, isn't that him basically saying that he knows that Taylor Decker is going to retire? I mean, so let me bring up maybe this is just the way to do it. Let's just jump into a mock draft just real quick, just so we can talk about some of these situations a little bit more clearly. So St. Brown should just stick to the jugs machine. Donkey Kong, I'm getting the feeling that you are not a current fan of Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is fine. You don't have to be a fan. Like, I have a couple of people I work with who are just like, every time they see me, they're like, fire Dan Campbell. And I'm like, okay, like, that's, everyone can have their opinion. I'm not upset about them having an opinion, but the Lions aren't going to do that, Okay, so let's take a look. Let's just kind of take a look here at like offensive linemen in the draft that like could be available to the Lions. So it's not a great draft for like top end elite offensive tackle, but there are a good number of them. So first off, Spencer Fano from Utah, 6'6", 308. That's a little bit lighter height, weight, speed wise than like the Lions prefer. But he is kind of regarded as the best offensive tackle in the class. He is a right tackle, if I'm correct. Yeah. He played the last 2 years at right tackle at Utah. He is, I believe, 21 years old. If you draft him, like, are you moving Penei Sewell to left tackle? Right? I would prefer, dude, St. Brown cut all the fans down. Saying fans don't know ball, fans don't know anything. So many people in these chats on these shows are boycotting St. Brown, trade him. Well, they're not going to trade him. I understand being upset because I understand being upset because of what he said, you know. I will say that compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't know. Like, no, I mean, like if this was if you were going to compare me and Amon-Ra St. Brown and our depth of knowledge on football and just transfer that to any other topic, like let's say like how to drive your car, right? Then Amon-Ra St. Brown is the person who wrote the book on how to drive your car, and I am the guy who sits behind the wheel having thought about doing it once or twice. You know, like that's the difference in however, he should know better than to basically say fans don't know ball. Like to be honest, and like that kind of like that attitude this year, I understand that like the Lions didn't have the year that they wanted to have, and that like that makes them frustrated, plus they have to hear about it from us because they didn't live up to our expectations or their expectations. However, like your PR people in the building should be like, never say anything that even can be remotely attributed to like putting the fans down in any way. You know, like we are, like you could make the case that like all professional sports are simply a product by which to put advertising behind so that people can get our money that we work for. And you know, and so I mean, largely that's how I look at it now, is that like professional sports are largely just a vehicle for advertising dollars. Then we have this guy, Francis Mauigoa, who big guy, 6'6", 315. Now we're talking the kind of size that like the Lions would entertain. Great big right tackle. He has played lots of snaps at right tackle and on the right side of the line. Good pass blocker, good run blocker. I think that this would be a guy that the Lions would certainly entertain as quote unquote being on their board, you know, minus the medicals and interview and that kind of stuff, which I think would go probably pretty well. And then of course there is this guy, Caden Proctor. Caden is one of the few strictly left tackles in this class. He has improved every year per PFF. He is enormous. He is 6'7", 366, according to Alabama's website. Now, that if that doesn't make the Detroit Lions salivate when it comes to like what he is capable of, then I don't know what will. If the Lions drafted Caden Proctor, who I am not a fan of, they would have two of the most enormous / athletic tackles in the NFL. You know, like Jim Harbaugh, who I quite like, said a couple of years ago, like offensive linemen are weapons, you know, and this guy I think fits that bill. The thing I don't like about him is, number one, I question his foot speed to hold up against NFL pass rushers. And number two, like when he's from Iowa originally, and he committed to Iowa and then flipped his commitment to Alabama. Okay, that happens all the time. No problem. He plays his freshman year at Alabama, transfers back to Iowa, gets a $100,000 NIL package, not from the school, from like boosters, cashes the check, and then transfers back to Alabama. I absolutely hated that move. But then he played better in his sophomore year, and he was quite good this year as a junior. So if that is the trajectory, this guy, Caden Proctor, in my opinion, is the best fit for the Detroit Lions because left tackle only, ultra athletic, meets the height, weight, speed combination the Lions are looking for, and you don't have to move Penei Sewell from the right side where he's having a Hall of Fame career thus far. So you could go into next year if everything worked. Let's say that Glasgow, Decker, and Skipper all retire. You could go into next year. Best case scenario, your offensive line could look like this: Proctor at left, Mahogany at left guard, Connor McGovern at center, Tate Ratledge at right guard, Penei Sewell at right tackle, Giovanni Manu at tackle 3, offensive lineman 6. I think that would be excellent, and I don't think that anybody could say, oh, the Lions haven't put in the kind of resources, the kind of urgency that we expect to see out of them to fix this particular thing. I think the fact that they hired Petzing is the first indication we have as to what their priorities are going to be in the offseason. And if they want to move to a power running game, which I think will also help Gibbs, because if Gibbs gets behind this kind of offensive line, this athletic, this big, this has this ability to move people, I don't mind I guess I don't mind like a 60-40 split between, favoring him, between him and Montgomery, but you have to run Montgomery. I saw a stat that's like, when you run David Montgomery 15 times in a game, like the Lions won like 80% of those games. It's just, and it's not the same with Gibbs, unfortunately. So okay, so we talked about tight ends. Let's talk about tight ends. So if we're going to talk about tight ends in this new offense, the run blocking grade is something that I think that we really have to look at. So here's Eli Stowers, 6'4", 235. So he's pretty light with a poor run blocking grade. This is the guy this is not the right guy. Did they take the guy that I wanted? Probably. How far? Come on now. Let's go, computer. There it is. Akeem Mesidor from Miami. This is the guy that I think I would like across from Hutch. So, but alas. But if he's not there, I will gladly take his teammate, Keontae Scott. Keontae Scott, 6 foot, 195, kind of an up and down career at Miami. Slot corner. More than willing to come up and tackle. I think that they'll like his attitude, and I believe that Amik Robertson is probably done in Detroit. And the reason that I think that is he's probably got one more decent sized contract in him. And I don't think the Lions are going to be able to give it to him. I think they're a top free agency need is the best center that they get. I think that that's true. You want Gabe Jacobs. Interesting. I would be very happy with that pick. I would be happy with somebody that I think can more of a pass rush. So the Lions have consistently looked for this kind of crush the can approach to the defensive line where they want to crush the pocket and have it implode in on itself. And I guess we have now seen that with Hutch he was a 22 class, so 4 years. And I'm ready to try something else. I'm ready to try a more let's get up the field, beat the tackle, sack the quarterback approach. So as opposed to like the Lions' approach so far has been like play good run defense, have some pass rush upside. I guess that I would rather go now. Let's rush the passer and have run defense upside. So we've got another tight end on the board here. Let's take a look at Josh Cuevas from Alabama. 6'3", 256. Okay, we're getting closer. A 58 run blocking score is a little below average, but he is better than we have seen. I like the height, weight, speed, and we're not talking about getting a tight end 1 here. We're talking about getting here's one from Notre Dame. Okay, not quite as good. 6'7", my lord. That's pretty big. See if there's any other tight ends on the board here real quickly. Doesn't look like it. Miles Kitselman. How you doing, Miles? 6'5", 255, so he's basically Sam Laporta. Not a great running game. Okay, so let's for the lack of, I don't know these guys, but like we'll take Cuevas here. Suevas. I don't know. If anybody out there speaks Spanish, can help me with my pronunciation, that would be awesome. So I think that Petzing is going to want to bring in these real heavy looks and just beat up on people. So think about it like in the context of the people that will play in the division. So if you're going to play the Bears, I'm happy running straight power against their defensive line. If you're playing against the Packers, I'm happy to run straight power against their defensive line. If you're playing against the Vikings, who looks like Flores will probably be back with that, unless he's hired by the Steelers, which I doubt, and the Ravens, which looks like it could be more of a possibility, as the days go on. Here's another tight end, Daquan Wright. Terrible run blocking grade. But then Ole Miss did not do that much. Bishops Fitzgerald, safety, 5'11", 205. He looks like a coverage free safety type, which I would be happy to take. Kind of plays all over. So I would take this guy because what is the status of Kirby Joseph? And this guy could just be like, oh, Aiden Fisher just went in front of him. That's a bummer. Oh, congratulations, Indiana University, for winning the national title. What a great year that they had. And they looked like the number 1 team, beat all the teams in front of them. Some of them quite badly. Bama and Oregon, I'm looking at you. And they earned it. So proud of Indiana University. I don't hate them. So good job. So now I'm kind of in the weeds here a little bit. I mean, you can get a running back. Craig Reynolds is now a New England Patriot. You could pick up, let's take a look at Lake McCree here. Terrible, not very good run blocking grade. How big are you, Tate? 6'4", 250, a little bit light. What else? I like this guy a lot, this fullback from Navy. He's quite small, 6 foot 206. But I mean, look at these grades. I mean, rushing grade, zone grade, gap grade, just maybe probably a special teamer with a package of plays for him. I mean, I'd be up Kalon Black. Ooh. Yeah. How about this kid from Indiana? I know he's not this is their number 2 guy. Right. And Hemby was their number 1. How old is this kid? He's a redshirt senior, so he's 23. Well, that's on our timeline. Let's take him to be running back 3. And so Detroit fan, man, to your last comment here, for me, it's a D end in the second round. I think the Lions are going to, I would not be surprised if the Lions end up going, here's the Hemby kid. I didn't know he was in the class. Oh, he is also a redshirt senior. Huh. I must have just skipped over him. Sorry, I'm getting off topic here. But like I think that the Lions have employed this best player available strategy for a long time now, for the 5 or 6 drafts that Holmes has been a part of. And like when you're as bad as the Lions were when he took over, I think that's a fine approach to take. Just take good players. Okay, makes sense, right? Hard to argue with the no, take worse players, But let's see. 6'5", 317. But once you get to the level of like average or good, but it's because I think Amik is resigning and AQM is. Oh, it really? Oh, that makes sense. I do think though that this like best player available approach that Brad has taken, which I mean, it's hard for me to argue that he does best player available when he continuously trades up to target players. Like you're not taking the quote unquote best player available if you're trading up to target somebody. You're trading up to go get the guy that you like the most. Like, and that doesn't always mean best player available. It means the guy that you like the most. And like I've always hated the term best player available because sometimes like it's a let's say it's a defensive tackle or a linebacker and you don't take them because you're good at defensive tackle and linebacker. Well, then you're not taking the best player on the board. Yeah. Well, we could do another mock and see if he's there. Then you're just taking the guy that fits you the best, which is not best player. So like to me, Brad Holmes doesn't do a best player available approach. He has a small big board of players that he thinks fits the team and then aggressively targets them because he's not sure, as he's not patient enough or not willing to allow the board to fall to him to see if they're still there. So he overpays to go get them. Okay, and that's fine. As a strategy, I guess, and it pays off. But now you're in a state with a roster where you have to kind of do like a little bit of a retooling, right? Like, oh, okay, we have our pillars in place. We've paid everybody or just about, and and we didn't live up to expectations. So now we're going to bring in some different guys to, different philosophies, or whatever. And now we need the draft capital to quote unquote, like, either to restock with certain talent at certain positions or to bring in a lot of young players onto the roster, especially like the back third of the roster, in order to refresh the salary cap for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And like I don't mind them having guys that they want to develop, like Nowatzki, Manu, Sione Vaki, or whatever. But like they traded a 3rd round pick to get the 4th round pick to take Giovanni Manu. He's done nothing for the Lions, and this is going into his 3rd season, 4th season, and they traded a 4th round pick, a future 4th round pick, to draft Sione Vaki, who has just played special teams, and he's good at special teams, but like I don't know that I would take a core special teamer that high in the draft, and welcome to Detroit, Luke Altmaier. But like I do think that if Brad wants to have the kind of longevity, can he catch? Well, okay, I don't know, But like the guy has been asked to become a tackle, right? And has spent the entirety of his NFL career learning how to be a tackle, right? I don't know that you now change that to make, like have him become like a hybrid tackle tight end. It seems like he's having a hard time picking up being a tackle, right? Which to me is just an unbelievably big red flag. Skipper did it. Okay. Didn't know that. That's good information. And I don't know that it's something that if one guy can do it, that doesn't mean another guy can. I suppose. I guess. Like I guess my question back to you would be, what out of Giovanni Manu have you seen that he could do that? Like right now, I would say that he's a complete and total bust. Which is a shame. I think that his absolute ceiling for what he's going to do in the NFL is Dan Skipper. If he can be Dan Skipper at the best of Dan Skipper, then I might say that the pick was not wasted, but like it's getting really close to being wasted. I mean, you give every draft pick 3 years to quote unquote see if they work out. Or you're supposed to. I know we don't do that anymore. Is like a fan base. Any professional sports fan base doesn't give the amount of time necessary to have people develop into their careers. But I just think that some of Brad's picks have been real head scratchers to me. Others, he's nailed some other stuff. I liked Christian Mahogany in the 6th. I liked Miles Frazier in the 5th. Like, and those guys are still young enough where it's like I haven't come out and said what I think about you because you haven't been in the league long enough. Man, he was like Bigfoot. Have any of us really seen him? I just remember hearing about how athletic he is. Well, he's like, we just talked about Caden Proctor, right? 6'7", like 365. Like, I believe that Manu was like 6'8", 350, and moved like a normal person, at that size, which is saying something. So I'll look him up here real quick. But you could be, as big and as fast and as all get out. And is he not in the PFF database? Oh, there he is. And still like not get it, right? And that's the problem that I think that Giovanni Manu really has, is that like he cannot get his brain to line up with what they want his body to do. So here he is, this pretty good looking dude, 6'7", 350. Okay. Let's see. Bio. Nothing. Okay. PFF has some work to do when it comes to like, if you're going to put a bio in like a player profile, like don't just have team Detroit Lions. Kind of ridiculous. He has played. That was this season. Let's go view him in premium stats, which means I'll have to change the goddamned screen share again. Yeah. Gone. Share my screen. Premium stats. Share this. Go back to the screen. Add the screen to the stage. Hello. Okay, 6'7", 352. He went to British Columbia College. Oh, I guess that he has. He was not in the 2024 draft. He was in the 2024 draft. Interesting. I have thought that he's been around longer than he actually. Maybe it just see. Hey, what's up, man? I know, Joseph. I apologize. Like we have had such since I've moved to second shift, it's just been impossible to stick to a adhere to a strict like streaming schedule. So I do it when I can, usually without Mike, which is a shame. And but I will be doing another show tomorrow at noon. So I'll touch a little bit on what we talked about this time, and I'm starting to go through like the different position groups. And so just trying to keep it going. We're not doing as well as I had wanted us to. So Giovanni Manu, he has been in Detroit. This is at least his second season. He just didn't play in his. I'm going to go to Over the Cap. He just didn't play his rookie season. This website is so unbelievably chock full of ads that I almost don't want to use it anymore. Oh, they're already to the 2026. They've changed over. The new year hasn't started yet, guys. Oh my god. All right, let's see if he's on this list. There he is right there. Yeah, he was on the roster in 2024. He was on the roster in 2025. You know, he's on the roster next year and the year after, and that's his rookie contract. They took him in round 4, 126th overall. They traded a 3rd round pick to get that pick because they had traded all their other fucking picks, you know? So like, well, I do not try to intentionally make anybody mad, but I will say that like I think that if I ran an NFL team, the fans would hate my guts because I didn't play football, you know, I don't have the mindset that a lot like so like my co-host is a good example. Like I love Mike. Like we're good friends. We are different people. And Mike is very much like the we're gonna go all in. Like we're gonna make a big trade, right? Fuck the salary cap, fuck the future, like cap considerations, like fuck the draft picks, all of it. Like let's go win one Super Bowl, like one Super Bowl, and we can be 9-8 forever, right? And I just don't think that way. I think when I go in to compete at something, I don't want to have a quote unquote good game. I want to crush people. I want to crush people to the point where they realize that they never should have come out onto the field, sat down at the table, stood at the starting line, and competed with me. Like I want to destroy their ability to want to compete against me. And so like I do not like football games like the Rams and Bears played last week. I like football games like what Seattle and San Francisco did. You know, I like football games where Indiana beats Alabama and makes them look like, oh, wait a second, Alabama was a powerhouse 3-4 years ago. Really? This Alabama? You know, like, or when they come out and they just step all over Oregon's throat, you know, and like, that's what I want the Detroit Lions to be. I want the Detroit Lions to look like the Indiana Hoosiers this year. That kind of mentality, that kind of, we're good, we're better than you are, we're going to now go beat you up and prove it. That's who I want the Detroit Lions to be. And I think that like Sheila, Brad, and Dan are the right people to make that happen. And it's just really difficult, you know. And I've started to hear people say things like, if Brad doesn't get this Drew Petzing pick correct, like he should be on the hot seat. He should. I mean, like, if I asked chat, let me ask my AI on my phone here real quick. Where does Dan Campbell rank for most all-time wins as a Detroit Lions head coach?
Dan Campbell is currently ranked 5th all-time for most wins as the Detroit Lions head coach. He passed 43 wins, moving ahead of coaches like Joe Schmidt and Monty Clark. He is behind Wayne Fontes, Buddy Parker, Dutch Clark, and Potsy Clark.
So Dan Campbell is second in wins in Detroit Lions NFL team history behind Wayne Fontes. And if he gets 2 10-win seasons over the next 2 years, he'll tie him. So like there is a very real, achievable future where Dan Campbell in under 10 years becomes the all-time winningest head coach in Detroit Lions football history. He has already got the team as close to a Super Bowl as anybody else has. And they have the kind of like top-down owner to GM to coach communication that other teams are out there striving to get. And we're talking about, the fans are talking about, and the media is talking about, should we let this guy go if he doesn't get this hire right? And I'm thinking, like, that's such a stupid thing to do. It's a stupid thing that the Ravens let go of John Harbaugh. It's a stupid thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers asked Mike Tomlin to resign. It's a stupid thing that the Bills fired Sean McDermott. Like, it's stupid. It's just difficult to win in the NFL. Like, and all of these guys are out there. The thing is that Wayne Fontes was the weak link of the 90s Lions. I mean, like, and that's just, I don't think that Dan Campbell is a weak link. Like, this is like 2 years ago, right? The Lions had a 12-win season, and you see people in like the comment section of like big chats, like with usernames like Dan Campbell's Bulge, and like that kind of stuff. And like, that's the kind of like, I mean, you hear people chanting Jared Goff's names at like Tigers games, and that kind of stuff. And like, they had a winning season this year. They beat the Bears twice. The Bears are still, well, the Bears just lost, but the Bears went to the divisional round of the playoffs. Like, I don't think that this season was a failure. I just think that other people would say it didn't live up to their expectations, and so like, yeah, I have a different take on how to manage an NFL team, but like, I'm not in a position to run an NFL team. So, so everyone else is lucky because they would hate it, because I would be that slow grind. Like, we're going to let go of this beloved player because of positional value. We're going to trade down every year and accumulate a bunch of picks. Like, here's something that I cannot believe that Brad Holmes has not done yet, and that is to start taking advantage of compensatory picks. Like, the Lions roster is now ready to start being very particular about who's on the roster, right? You have a quarterback, you have your right tackle. Like, there's a ton of guys that they've already given money to, and there's a ton more guys that are going to get paid, and those are pillars, of the team. And so like, they could, I mean, like, if you want to have these high paid guys on the roster, trade out of the first round. Like, you pay second round picks nothing compared, to Cocaine Wayne had his brother coach the defensive backs. Well, I mean, like, if I was using cocaine, I would blame my son too. I mean, that's just who I am, like, I want a good bump, and then I don't want to have to be, have to live with the ramifications of it, Just kidding. I don't do cocaine. Seems terrible. So let me it's interesting that like Joseph is in chat and like it tells me that there are no live viewers. I don't understand that at all. But okay, technology. So like let me just show you what I would do here. Okay, so it's not going to let me do it because no one wants to trade down. So I would draft. Oh, I haven't shared this. There we go. I'll draft Caden Proctor to be my new left tackle. Hooray. Speed this up a little bit. But like, you know, the Patriots traded down into the second round out of the first for a lot of years, you know, and they lived with like, you know, we have Tom Brady. So we are going to put as many, like, to use a baseball analogy, doubles, you know, around him as we possibly can. And we're just going to quote unquote raise the floor. And then periodically we're going to go out and we're going to get Randy Moss and, you know, we're going to luck our way into Rob Gronkowski and, you know, that kind of thing, you know? So like, let's see if we can get a trade offer here. Where did Sonny Styles go? I have such a huge prospect crush on Sonny Styles. Oh, to the Ravens? Yes, enjoy. Okay. So let's say that here we have the Eagles. That's our first the minimum that we can trade down. Let's say we're going to trade them. We're going to trade down 6 spots. I want a 3rd round pick, and can I get a 4th round pick? No. Can I get a future 3rd? No. Can I get a future 4th? Yeah. Can I get a 5th this year? No. So let's offer this. I can trade down 6 spots. I pick up a 3rd, and I pick up a 4th in a future class. All right. Okay. So I can still draft Caden Proctor, and I'm gonna. Okay, so now I picked up a 3rd round pick. We don't have a 3rd round pick because Brad traded 3 of them last year for I was going to say Anzalone's position. I mean, I would be surprised if Alex Anzalone is back this year. It just seems I'm really fascinated by this guy. Doesn't matter. I don't think that Alex Anzalone is on the team next year. I think what will happen is that the Lions will not want to give him a raise, and they will say, go and test free agency. And then I think somebody with a lot of money, the Jets, the Titans, are going to say, okay, we'll give you $8 million a year on a 3-year deal to come be a veteran presence in our locker room for a young team, right? If he goes to the Jets, he's reunited with Aaron Glenn, that kind of thing. And I think the Lions will be like, if you go to free agency and there's no market, we will bring you back, but at a discount. And if there is a market for you, we're okay with you signing somewhere else in the offseason. And when you have an all-pro, I believe he's an all-pro in Jack Campbell, right? And you can put another unbelievably athletic player like Sonny Styles next to him, it works like a force multiplier. Like you have such a good linebacker duo then that I wonder how much that changes what other teams are able to do against you defensively. So Jack Campbell is your typical 10 years ago Mike linebacker. Smart, big, fast, runs downhill, fills gaps, good tackler, right? And now this year we're starting to see those splash plays, like he gets a sack, he deflects a pass, he forces a fumble. I think he forced 4 fumbles this year. And then if you have that guy, and then you put an ultra athletic player like Sonny Styles, long arms. I think he missed 1 tackle all year, sideline to sideline, former safety who can cover. If you put him next to Jack Campbell to cover up the things that Jack Campbell does not do well, which is coverage most of the time. And to be fair to Jack Campbell, he's getting better at it. But like Sonny Styles is great at it. And you put those 2 guys together, and I think that they should live in nickel. Like what I would love is that in like a year and a half from now or whatever, the Lions trot out effectively a starting nickel package that looks something like Hutch, Ali McNeil, Tyleek Williams, future like question mark at the other defensive end spot. And then their quote unquote linebacking core is Jack Campbell, Sonny Styles, and Brian Branch. Like you put Brian Branch and Sonny Styles on opposing sides of Jack Campbell. Defense, like offense, how our offense is going to go sideline to sideline anymore? And like, do you think that those guys aren't, all 3 of those guys are going to come up and tackle well? You know, like I just think it makes a front 7 that is almost, I don't know how you attack it. You know, like you can't just run straight at them, and you can't run side to side at them. You know, like I just would love that. You know, and then hopefully Kirby Joseph is healthy and not in pain. You know, and you can run DJ Reed and Terrion Arnold, and then like future strong safety, or you know, to fill what Brian Branch was doing in the back end. You know, and it's not difficult to get strong safeties. It's not difficult to get, you know, nickel corners anymore. You know, like it's I just look at the way that like when they said that they were going to move Branch deeper off the ball, away from the quarterback, I thought, what a terrible idea. Because I would want that guy covering running backs and tight ends, occasionally blitzing, blowing up like wide receiver, tight end, and running back screens. You know, so here's our 3rd round pick, right? So what do you want to do with this pick? Like, you could take Max Clare, 6'5", 243. He could be your quote unquote 3rd tight end, kick Shane Zylstra off the roster. Good run blocker, right? Good, pretty good size, 6'5", 243. Probably a future number 2 tight end. Or if Sam Laporta is hurt, possibly a number 1, right? Like that makes some sense to me. Here's this guy, Jack Endries, 6'4", 236, pretty good run blocker for a guy that size. Doesn't drop the ball. You know, do you want to add to the tight end room? What about Michael Trigg? Not what I'm looking for. I want a dude that's going to block. You know, do you want to take, you know, what if they don't sign Connor McGovern? You want Jake Slaughter, you know, in what is this? Just the top of the 3rd round. This kid, Skylar Bell, another wide receiver. Is Khalif Raymond going to be on the roster? Here is Carter Smith, 6'5", 313, another good tackle. Like if you're going to run 13 personnel, why not draft another tackle and just call him a tight end? Oh, I'm reporting as eligible, and then just line his huge ass up and beat people to death with it. Like I would rather cut Giovanni Manu and draft Carter Smith, who is a guy who has played tackle on a national championship college football team, who has beaten the best of the best in college football and played against the best of the best in college football. You know, like he played against Arvell Reese this year. He played against Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain. He played against Mayo Ugalele from Oregon. You know, like these are guys that like you are going to look at that film when it comes to deciding like what kind of a player you are at an NFL level. And like just if load up, stop drafting guys who are developmental projects. Draft dudes like this and just in the same spots and just line up and beat people to death with them. Like I don't that's my problem is that Brad Holmes sometimes is like, we're going to try and make a triple. We're going to try and manufacture a triple when we've got a fucking double staring us in the face, you know? And I'm just like, I'm so done with that. Like, I just want good quality players. Like, I'm going to take this kid, Jadarian Price, because why not have a 3-headed monster at running back? Why not? You know, like, what happens if Gibbs or Montgomery tweaks an ankle or a knee or a hamstring or something like that? And we have the roster spot. Like, we have, you don't have to do it, but like, we have the roster spot. Craig Reynolds left. Like, Jadarian Price was very good this year for Notre Dame. So, like, why not? I don't know. Michael Taft, 6 foot 190, which seems to be what every defensive back in college football is. You know, and like, I like what some of the things that Brad Holmes has done recently. He went out and he drafted Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, and traded for Carlton Davis, and then signed Amik Robertson all in the same, you know, the same offseason, and just remade, you know, the back end. Ooh, is this a player from Western Michigan University? 6'3", 250. 28%, 14 sacks. So this would be like the James Houston type player, but like, why not take a chance on a guy who had 14 sacks, even if it is the Mac, you know? Like, I like that better than like James Houston in the 6th or like the ever rotating bunch of pass rushers. If they draft, I don't think that they would ever do this, but if they draft Diego Pavia, I'm done. You know, I mean, like, why not? I mean, this isn't the guy to make my point, but like, why not take another wide receiver? Like, why are some of these rooms, linebacker, wide receiver, whatever, like, why are some of these rooms in the Lions clubhouse not stacked beyond fucking belief, right? That's the thing. Like, Brad has hit on so many guys in his first 3 drafts that like you should be able to go into the draft now, trade down even like your first and second picks, and like pick up a bunch of like day 2 picks and just flood the roster with like the cheapest, still really talented guys who are just the quote unquote good football players, right? Like, the back end of this roster should be an absolute glut of dudes who should be probably starting for bad teams in the NFL. But for whatever reason, our depth should be unbelievable when it comes to, you know, players like this. Like, so like, for example, they traded up 4 spots 2 years ago to get Terrion Arnold, right, with Dallas. The Dallas picks, if they had kept their pick that they traded, they gave up a 3rd rounder, then they could have taken Nate Wiggins, who is a corner for Baltimore, who's playing great, and Cooper Beebe, who is a interior lineman, who's the current center of the Dallas Cowboys, and a relatively good one. Like, those players could be on Detroit. And if you told me, hey, Drew, would you trade Terrion Arnold for Nate Wiggins and Cooper Beebe? Even if like Terrion Arnold comes over to my house for holidays, I'm going to say yes. Like, you know, like that's just good. You know, like he spends so much money, so much draft capital to like trade back up for Jahmyr Gibbs, whom I like, you know, but like he gave up a lot. And he traded up in, I believe it was the same draft for Broderick Martin, who's not on the roster anymore. And we traded 3 third-round picks for Isaac TeSlaa, who I like. But like, if I went back, maybe I can do this as kind of like the last thing that I'm going to do this year. So Isaac TeSlaa was a rookie. So this was the 2025 draft. So let's go to, I'll just go to Google. So 2025 NFL draft picks by round. Go to round 3. Okay, let's see. I'll share my screen for the people who are still listening/watching. Then I'll come back here and add it to the stage. Then I'll do what I yell at Mike to do all the time, which is to make the goddamn screen bigger. Okay, so here was the Isaac TeSlaa pick. We traded, I believe we had the last pick in round 3, right? So let's see. And we traded with Jacksonville. Yeah, okay. So let's look at where Jacksonville picks in this round. Why can I not see any of the teams? Okay. Okay, so here we have the first of the Jacksonville picks, right? So this is where we're going to look at players after this. Josiah Stewart from Michigan, an edge rusher. He is playing outside linebacker for them, the Rams. They're still playing. Jared Wilson from Georgia. He is playing center or left guard, but he's a center, 6'3", 310 for the Patriots. He's a starter. Xavier Watts, who why would you draft another safety, Drew? Well, we had 2, and now we don't. He is playing really well for the Falcons. Let's see. Who else? Upton Stout is a starting corner on the San Francisco 49ers. So these 2 picks plus the pick that we got for Isaac TeSlaa, right? So what if the Lions traded Isaac TeSlaa for Josiah Stewart, Jared Wilson, and your pick of Xavier Watts and Upton Stout? That would be fucking crazy, right? You know, and it's like, oh, you still have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams on your team. So why trade up? And I mean, you could have these guys would be starters for Detroit next year. You would have a starting center. You would have a starting safety because both of our safeties are hurt. You know, and you would have a guy that you could either have as a part-time rush linebacker or like a starting edge across from Aiden Hutchinson. And you have these things, and Brad, instead of doing it, instead of doing that, he's like, no, we have to go get TeSlaa. No, we have to go get Broderick Martin. No, we have to trade picks in future drafts so that we can get Sione Vaki and Giovanni Manu. And I'm just like, he's done a wonderful job. But like, I could draft Penei Sewell. I can draft Aiden Hutchinson. You know, like, I probably would not have traded up for Jameson Williams. I probably would have stuck at 32 and traded down. I know it's an exercise in futile hindsight, but like if you don't study what you did and like what you could do differently, then you're going to keep making the same mistakes, right? That's why anyone studies history, right? So I'm not saying that like during the draft, I was like, oh, they traded up for Terrion Arnold, who I had going at like 8 or 9 to the Falcons that year, and like the Lions got him at 24. So I was thrilled, even though they traded up to get him. You know, when that happened, I wasn't saying, oh, we should stick and take Nate Wiggins and then draft Cooper Beebe in round 3. You know, like when they took to Sla, I wasn't like, oh, they should stick, and then we can take Josiah Stewart and Jared. What's his name? Hang on one second. Jared Wilson and Xavier Watts in round 3. But what I was thinking was, here's an opportunity with these 3rd round picks to go ahead and build actual depth. And like Brad doesn't want to do that. Brad wants to trade up and target, quote unquote, his guys, right? Best player available, you know, that kind of stuff. And like what you hear, like, so like for the Isaac TeSlaa pick and the Jahmyr Gibbs picks is, well, those players wouldn't have been there when we would have made a selection. Okay. So what? I mean, there are other really good players that can help the Detroit Lions, you know, in their drafts. So like if we went to, what year was Gibbs? Was he 23? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So if the Lions had not taken Jahmyr Gibbs, right? So they trade down with, was it Arizona? Yeah, from Cleveland through Houston and Arizona. Yeah, so like they were sitting at 6, right? And they could have stayed at 6. So if they stayed at 6, they could have had Jalen Carter. And there's a lot of people that were like, I don't like Jalen Carter. The whole driving incident at Georgia, not the kind of guy that you want on the team, right? Okay, great. You know, but you could have Jalen Carter. Like he is a top, I don't know, 5, 10 defensive tackle in the NFL. But we have Tyleik Williams. So if Tyleik Williams, but I don't think Tyleik Williams is going to be anything like Jalen Carter. You know, and it's like, okay, I mean, like Jahmyr Gibbs has been excellent for the Detroit Lions. Excellent. You know, but if you give David Montgomery just the rushing, just the carries that Jahmyr Gibbs has, like he's going to be a top 5 running back in the NFL if you look at like yards gained, touchdown scored, that kind of stuff. And there would be 70 additional receptions to split around between Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams, bring in a third receiver, something like that, you know. And like it's not like David Montgomery is not Jahmyr Gibbs in the receiving game. I'm not trying to make the point that he's not, but he's also not terrible, you know. And that's the problem. Is it seems like to me that Brad gets like just falls in love with 5 or 6 players in the NFL draft and then manages to draft 2 or 3 of them because he's unbelievably aggressive trading up. And like it's a good thing that I'm not the GM of the Detroit Lions because my roster would be boring compared to Brad Holmes. But I think that we'd be better because the back third of the roster is better. Oh yeah. So like, I mean, listen, I am biased because I'm a David Montgomery fan. Like I like running backs who run like David Montgomery, and it hurt my feelings. It hurt my feelings this year when they minimized his role for what I could tell to be no good reason. So, and that's the other thing. Like I think a lot about the Detroit Lions. I don't know that I think about the Detroit Lions correctly in a way that would maximize their ability to win a Super Bowl. But it's entirely possible that like the methodology that Sheila, Brad, and Dan have would reach its absolute zenith in just going and competing in an NFC championship game, you know. And it's like, I think that Brad gave an interview at the end of the season where it was kind of like, year in review, I need to do a better job. Well, and he said that he gave himself an F, and Dan said that he gave himself an F as far as like what they did. But like what they are really saying to me is they're grading themselves pass fail on whether or not they met the expectations they had for the team, and they didn't, so they failed. So they gave themselves Fs. I don't think that the job that Brad Holmes did this year was an F. I don't think that the job that Dan Campbell did this year was an F. I think that they each made mistakes bringing in John Morton, who I think they zeroed in on, and like that is one of my concerns about the Petzing hire, is that it feels like they zeroed in on him, because it's like, this is a guy that's not going to get head coaching interviews 1 year after he signs with us. Like Mike McDaniel is going to go work with Justin Herbert for 1 year under Jim Harbaugh, and then he's going to have head coaching opportunities again in the 2027 coaching carousel. And it's okay, but like, he's also going to go work with a top 5 quarterback who's going to get 2 excellent tackles back next season, and who is going to have an off season to surround that group with maybe another skill player. Maybe they go from, like, I don't know where they ranked on like the defensive side of the ball, but maybe they improve 5 spots on like overall defensively, and that could be enough to win their division and make the playoffs. And then who knows, right? And instead of Detroit doing that, they went with a guy that they were like, well, he'll be here for the long haul. Right. The NFL season is a war of attrition. The argument for depth is real. And like, the Lions themselves have said that, like, we want to improve our depth, right? This roster went from having basically no good players to then having good players and needing to make depth to actively making picks for depth. And I think that where they have gotten the roster building incorrect is how they're trying to build for depth. They misunderstood the value Ben brought to the mix. By all accounts, Petzing is much more Ben than Morton. McDaniels is OC 2 seasons tops. I think Dan and Brad were hoping for a longer term answer. I agree with everything that you said there. Ben Johnson gave the new OC all the right answers. He said what Brad and Dan wanted to hear. It's entirely possible. Like, remember, Petzing was a groomsman in Ben Johnson's wedding. Like, the connection that Petzing has to the Detroit Lions is that he has never worked for Brad Holmes or Dan Campbell before. He worked with Ben Johnson. He has worked with Hank Fraley. So the long haul being 3 or 4 seasons instead of 1 or 2. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, to be honest, in the NFL, I mean, we are used to thinking of the NFL in terms of like 5 or 10 years. But like, in reality, the modern NFL is, you are talking about long term is 3 years. The length of you have to make up your mind on a rookie. The length of like what you're going to sign a free agent to. Like, NFL generations are measured in however many 3-year increments. So I think the Lions, with the Petzing hire, are trying to recreate Ben Johnson to some degree. And Petzing is going to work with the same people that Ben Johnson worked with, largely, right? Scotty Montgomery, Hank Fraley, and it's entirely, we still have a tight end coach position open. Like, it's entirely possible that he's going to bring his tight ends coach from Arizona to Detroit. So, and that's fine. Trey McBride just had one of the best years a tight end's ever had in the NFL on a team that had the 31st ranked offense or rushing attack or whatever it was this season in the NFL. But like, we as Detroit Lions fans have complained a lot about the injuries that the team has sustained in the last 2 years, and it has been a lot. But go look at Arizona's laundry list of injuries this year. And this guy, can make it work. Right. So, and like, I don't know who that guy is, but like, he is supposed to be like another guy that's like, oh, you could see him becoming an up and comer and like getting offensive coordinator and, interest or whatever. And so if he sticks around in Detroit, like, Detroit has a reputation for developing young coaches and like getting them to a position where they're going to like advance in their careers, right? So like Ben Johnson, very clearly, like Kelvin Shepard was a linebackers coach. Now he's a DC. He just had a head coaching interview or possibly two in Miami, so like he will probably warrant more head coaching interviews each cycle. The NFL is tough to figure. It's all about that second contract. Yeah, it is. It's a lot about the second contract because that's where you're supposed to put in like the prime of your career. You're still young, more young than you are veteran, and now you're making quote unquote real money, So the things that I like about the Petzing hire is that like I think that the Detroit Lions offense will look more like it was when it was run by Ben Johnson. It will be run by somebody who has play calling experience, 3 years of it, and so like I don't know, 1 year of it you can still kind of guess at it. 3 years of it, like that's a big enough sample size for anybody to say this guy's bad at it or this guy's accomplished at it. Like he's a legitimate offensive coordinator in the NFL for somebody, right? So like I think that Drew Petzing is those things. What Drew Petzing is not, I think, is a head coaching candidate at some point in his career. I could be wrong, but like to me, what that also says to me is that he is not the kind of coach of the quality of a Mike McDaniel, a Zach Robinson, a name your other up and coming offensive coordinator going to be a future head coach. And like, should the Detroit Lions be trying to add that level of talent, that level of intellect to the team? But they are playing for the long term. And I'm fine with playing for the long term when you're bad, but they're not bad anymore. They're mediocre to really good. And when you're mediocre to really good, it's less about longevity and continuity, and it's more about talent, and smarts and that kind of stuff. And like, I don't know if they said that Mike McDaniel was quote unquote not a fit for the Detroit Lions. And I was like, a fit with who? What do you mean? A fit in what way? Is it because we're all about grit and running through walls and marching into the gates of hell behind Dan Campbell? And he's more of the like California beach goer that's just like laid back with like a Mai Tai, like just enjoying life, after a meditation sesh, or whatever, like, because that's the kind of like person that I think that he is. But I watched a 5-minute video about him talking about football. That dude is a fucking genius. He is a genius when it comes to football. And like, if you cannot accommodate fucking genius onto your football team, I don't know what you're doing. Like if he's not a fit because he's a genius, then I don't know what it is. And like, I've seen him get worked up enough on an NFL sideline to tell me that he's passionate about it. Like maybe his passion doesn't look like what the Detroit Lions like practice field looks like or whatever. That doesn't mean he doesn't have it. Team was not ready for us last joint practice. I can't be surprised they went a different direction. No, I can't either. Like the Miami Dolphins had an absolute terrible start to their season. I will say though, they turned that shit around. Hang on 1 second. I mean, and I don't mean like, they went, gangbusters or whatever, but like they took their season from atrocious to pretty respectable. So I'm going to bring up, so they went 3 losses to start the season, 1 win, 3 more losses, win, loss, ripped off 4 wins in a row, loss, win, loss, tie. Oh, that's the preseason. Never mind. So their season looked like 3 losses, a win, 3 losses, a win, loss, 4 wins in a row, 2 losses, win, loss. So they ended up something like what? 1, 2, 6, 7. So they ended up with 7-10 after starting the season 1-6. Like that's not bad, No dope smoking hippie freaks need apply. I mean, if they're football geniuses, they can apply. Like that's the difference. Like I don't need my coaches to be the kind of guys that are like, I've got a lip full of tobacco. I've only known this my whole life. Now let me put my hand on my dick and run this practice. Like, I give a shit about like the most talented, smartest, hardworking people out there. And if the dude wants to smoke weed, which is fine with me, and be a hippie and still be all of the football things that I need him to be, that's cool. And like, my concern is that somebody, whether it's the president or Brad or Dan or whoever it is, thinking like, oh, this guy's not going to mesh well. Like if you know in an interview that you just can't work with another human being, like you're probably part of the problem. Like if the goal is to win a Super Bowl, right? If the ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl, then you might just have to be uncomfortable about working with another person because they're good and they can help you. And like maybe Drew Petzing is that person, right? Maybe Drew Petzing comes in and the Lions go out and they sign Connor McGovern and they draft a left tackle and they just start knocking people around and you're rushing for 150 yards a game and your third down conversion rate goes up and your turnovers go down. I saw North Dallas 40. I don't know what that means. You got to remember, I am the most straight-laced, uncool person ever. So if that is code for something, I don't know what that is. Let me just look that up here real quick. Google North Dallas 40. It's a 1979 film. North is a 1979 American comedy drama sports film starring Nick Nolte, Mac Davis, and G.D. Spradlin, set in the decadent world of American professional football in the late 70s. It was directed by Ted Kotcheff and based on the best-selling 1973 novel by Peter Gent. Screenplay plot. In the late 70s, Phil Elliott plays wide receiver for the North Dallas Bulls professional football team based in Dallas, Texas, which closely resembles the Dallas Cowboys. Although considered to possess the best hands in the game, the aging Elliott has been benched and relies heavily on painkillers. Elliott and popular quarterback Seth Maxwell are outstanding players, but they characterize the drug, sex, and alcohol-fueled party atmosphere of the era. Elliott only wants to play the game, retire, and live on a horse farm with his girlfriend Charlotte, an aspiring writer who appears to be financially independent due to a trust fund from her wealthy family and has no interest whatsoever in football. Well, sounds like an interesting movie. Right. And like I think that the problem that is facing the Detroit Lions is that the infusion of talent that they had in the first 3 years of this new regime took them to the highest that the Lions club has ever achieved, which is to appear in an NFC championship game. And now what has happened is that we find out that it doesn't take much to go from that to being average, in the NFL. And so now that you're average and stuck in Averageville, so when I yell at them for beating the Bears in the last week of the season, it's because if they had lost that game, which did not matter to them as far as like making the playoffs is concerned, and the Ravens had beat the Steelers, which they did not do, so this would not have worked, they would be picking 13th instead of 17th in the draft. And which means that every pick that they have is 4 picks better or roughly that equivalent throughout the NFL draft. And I have heard people say if Brad can't find value at 17, it does, it doesn't matter if he won't be able to find it at 13. And I'm here to tell you right now, that is bullshit. That is bullshit. Because if you are picking number 1 overall, you have access to every player in the draft. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. I want to say I detect some sarcasm there, but I'm not 100%. If you are picking number 1 in the draft, you have access to everybody in the draft, right? So yeah, you have a better chance of finding talent because everyone is available to you. So if you are picking 2 in the draft, you only have lost out on 1 player, right? So the earlier that you pick, the more players you have access to, therefore the easier it is to find talent, right? So like the idea that like, oh, if you can't find value at 17, you wouldn't be able to find it at 14 is fucking nonsense. It is like saying, oh, if you can't find talent with the last pick in the draft, you can't find talent picking 17 in the draft. It's just like, oh, you just have fewer available options to you. It's not about whether or not you can find talent. It's about having those players available to you. And like within the 4 picks that the Lions could have improved their draft stock if they had like quote unquote tanked, right? You might find an all pro as opposed to a pro bowler. Or you might find a pro bowler as opposed to an average player or a quality starter or whatever. Or you might find the guy that is quote unquote the best fit for your team and the fucking Bengals take him. Right? Because you can't get a trade done to go up and get him because the Bengals want the guy on their roster or whatever it is. So it gives you options. It gives you versatility at the loss of nothing. So okay, so I think this is a good a good take here. The question is the value of not having a losing season. And given the outrage our fan base has shown, I can't be mad at the win. Okay, I'm with you. The position is good. We disagree. But we have decades of losing stink to wash off. Agree there. So the only thing that I disagree with, Brian, is the position is good. Culture doesn't try to lose, and we are still building culture. All right, so this is the grit, outwork, ethos, practice what you preach, grit, right? And I will say that has proven to be worth more than I give it credit for, right? Oh, so I disagree completely with the position is good, but the not greater than the win. When you think about, this is a legitimate question. So when I think about this year in the future, right? Like 2 years from now, when I think back to the 2025 season, I am not going to think, what a great year, because we were 9-8. And I'm not going to think, I'm glad that we finished that year by beating the Bears. I would care more about losing the 4th place schedule than 3 or 4 slots. You can have both of those things. So like 2 years from now, I'm not going to look back at the season and say, oh, I am so proud of them for going out and winning a game that meant nothing to their playoff chances. Right? To me, there's no difference between being 9-8 and 8-9 if you don't make the playoffs. That's just me. So are you and the people that, so like I would ask Brian and Joseph, when a couple of years from now, you are going to look back at this season, the 2025 season, and you're going to say, I'm proud of the way that the Lions finished that season against Chicago, even if it means we are in the same position for 2 more years, right? You are going to be able to look back at week 18 of the 2025 season and say, that's my team, that's how we finish, right? And if the Lions are a 10-win team and an 11-win team in the next 2 years and go to the first round of the playoffs or lose, or maybe they win one and lose or whatever, you're still going to look back and be like, that's the way they should have done it. Am I correct in my assessment of how you're looking at this? Because to me, if going out and winning a game puts you back into a cycle of making the playoffs, losing in the first round, making the playoffs, not getting past the NFC Championship game, then it's the wrong approach. You're placing a lot of value on a bunch of unknown outcomes. I am basing them on a historically bad team putting together winning seasons. Okay, so let's talk about that. So if the Lions string together 5 more seasons and they're all winning seasons of whatever win totals, I can see that does something for the fan base, right? That takes the fan base from I have had losing seasons in Detroit for the most part my whole adult life, right? I'm 43. So a stretch of like 10 years of winning seasons would be really nice, right? I agree with that. I would also say, and you're right, I am putting a lot of value on the unknown, right? I agree with that. However, I would say that it is more known and it is going to become even better. We're going to have an even better idea of what's going to happen over the next 6 weeks. So like the unknown is going to come into focus very, very quickly. I think that the talent taken between 13 and 17 will be the rubric to test this by. We can talk about the shifting likelihoods, but that is different from claiming outcomes. But the outcome you're claiming, I would say there's no value on the outcome that you're claiming. To me, there's no difference between a 9-8 or an 8-9 season. And I understand that this is just my opinion and how I see it compared to your opinion and how you see it, right? So the premise is the Lions haven't won a Super Bowl. I'm pissed off then. So like, to me, the whole point of competitive professional sports is to win whatever sports ultimate last game of the season there is. I'm looking at this year's playoffs and thinking Jared Goff can win a Super Bowl. So I'm on record as saying the Lions are never going to win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff, but you guys probably know how I feel about Jared Goff. But okay, so let's take a look at your point though, Joseph. Like, maybe your point is broader than I'm giving it credit for. So if you look at this year's playoffs, there are no dominant teams in the NFL, right? Like who's the best team in the NFL? Right? New England, I have New England making the Super Bowl, who have played the easiest schedule in NFL history by whatever metric they were gauging it by, strength of schedule or whatever. And who did they play? They played, well, I can open up ESPN and look at who they played. That's what I can do. Let's see. Schedule. New England. They played the Chargers, who were beat to shit, right? They lost 2 tackles. And they blitzed Josh Allen all game. Or not Josh Allen. Josh Herbert. Justin Herbert. I am so bad at names. But then we should tank as soon as we don't rest. That I agree with that. And by all accounts, football players don't tank, so it would cost the locker room. We can't do it when Dan is. So I agree that like tanking is a front office decision, and that Dan Campbell and every football player that takes the field will in no way, shape, or form take part in not playing as hard or not doing everything that they can to win the game. But if you have anybody who's hurt, anybody who's kind of hurt, like if I was Brad Holmes, I'd be like, these guys are sitting, we're going to play young guys. You're going to play guys who we want to develop at whatever reason and give them like quote unquote in season snaps. Right. So like, those players and those coaches are going to always take the field and give everything that they have. No doubt, no question about it. You can tank when your front office does not give those players, does not give those coaches the best opportunity to win a football game. And it doesn't take much to not have a great, like how many football games did the Lions play this year without Kirby Joseph, without Brian Branch, with Taylor Decker playing at 50% of what he is. Penei Sewell, I believe, missed a game or he played hurt, and there's a lot of that, and it's like, okay, like I don't need, like Sam Laporta has a fully herniated disc, Brian Branch tore his Achilles. Kirby Joseph has knee problems that will probably never go away. Taylor Decker might have to retire because of like the wear and tear that's put on his body. I agree. And like their mindset, they have been taught since they were kids. Like you go out and you sacrifice your body and you sacrifice your future and you go out and you play those 70 snaps or whatever that you play in an NFL game to win. And it doesn't matter what else is on the line. You're not playing for some draft pick that you don't know that might take your job. You're going to go out there and you're going to play hard. And then I'm like, but I don't want Taylor Decker to have another 65 snaps of wear and tear on his shoulder or his knees. I don't want Kirby Joseph to ruin his other knee because he's putting so much, he has to favor it. Like Brian, Amon-Ra St. Brown has gone out and played hurt with like ligament damage. How many players have like Meek Robertson's out there with a fucking cast on his hand? Like when you have guys like that and you still have a roster and call-ups from your practice squad and stuff that you can use, then save the wear and tear. Let them start their recuperative process a week early. And they may not be thrilled about it, and Dan may not be thrilled about it, but then they did not do enough in the preceding 16 games to make the playoffs. And that's the part that I'm mad about. That's the part that gets me upset. Is not about the game that I mean, if you're playing for pride, which it sounds like what you are advocating for, that's great. I don't have any fucking pride. I take pride in when you can say you're the best. And like, I think the Detroit Lions are good, but they're not the best. And like, I would be maximizing their opportunity to become the best in whatever season it is. And so I respect your point of view. And I think that it's shared by the vast majority of NFL professional sports fans. And I do think that would be the mentality that if I was in charge of anything in a football organization, that I would have to fight against, because there are sports, basketball, for example, baseball is another example of like people not maximizing their team's ability to win the NBA Finals or the World Series. But in football, of all the professional sports in the United States of America, they tank the least. And it's because of the roster size. The roster size in the NFL is so much larger in comparison to every other professional sports franchise that in basketball, you have 5 guys that play offense and defense all the time. In football, you've got 11 guys playing offense and then the different 11 guys playing defense, right? So if you lose one of those guys on either side of the thing, it's not as big of a loss. If you lose the third best player on your team that plays both ways in basketball, right? If you're a DH in baseball, you're not out in the field helping your team on defense. You're just an offensive player. So my point is that, like, you have to do more in football to make up the difference on a player by player basis, right? So if that is my guiding principle, then I want my guys to be more healthy, have a better, they get a week with their families. There's other, they get one more week with their families, than they would otherwise if they were playing and back in the facility and all that kind of stuff. And, like, I'm not going to ask them to do any less in the off season because of the fact that we played Avonte Maddox, as opposed to Kirby Joseph, for example, or if we played Isaac Tesla as opposed to Jamison Williams to get him, to finally get him like 50, 60 snaps in a game. Well, they get paid. You still pay them. The money's not the problem. Like, I'm giving everybody their game checks. The owners are cool paying 20 extra players why wouldn't you be? I mean, the way that I think about that, Brian, is like this. So if I pay Aleem McNeil $28 million a year and we're going to miss the playoffs regardless, do I care about his $1.1 million game check? He's not playing the next week either way. I agree the money should not be a problem, but seeing how the league functions, it clearly is. So in professional sports, I think you have two kinds of owners. I think you have owners where money matters. And then I think you have owners where money is like monopoly money. So, like, where money matters is somebody like the Arizona Cardinals or the Cincinnati Bengals. These are the kinds of teams in the NFL players survey every year that score like the lowest. And these are the kinds of teams, like, if you remember in the movie Moneyball, they bring in that guy DJ David Justice, right, onto the Oakland Athletics, and he's trying to get a soda out of their can, and he keeps hitting the button and it won't come out. And one of the other players walks by and says, "It's $1, man." And he's like, "The fuck?" And he, like, walks away because he doesn't want to give up $1, for a can of Coke or whatever it is. And, like, the overwhelming amount of professional sports franchises, all that shit is free. And then some teams, some owners run their teams like businesses, like, and they have a bottom line, and they charge their, like, what was it? They I think it was the Cardinals with Larry Fitzgerald. He got hurt and there were games left in the season, and he basically said, like, I'm going to retire. And it was like he was going to the Hall of Fame, and the Cardinals sent him some kind of documentation about it, and they charged him for the postage. Or like the Bengals this year with their first round pick. Like, I mean, there's almost no negotiating necessary on a rookie deal, whether you're 1 or 250th. And they haggled and fucked around to the point where this guy almost went back to college when they should have just said, fine, here it is. And it's not about more or less money. It's about when he got his money. Just write him a check. And, like, how hard has Joe Burrow had to fight for them to pay guys like Chase and T. Higgins? And they're going to let Trey Hendrickson walk into free agency and get nothing out of him. Not trade him. He's just going to walk into free agency. He's going to be the best edge rusher that we've seen in free agency in like 15 years. Because they're fucking cheap. And then there's guys that are like, yeah, go ahead. Like, Brad Holmes has made Kirby Joseph one of the highest paid safeties in the NFL. He's made Aiden Hutchinson and Penei Sewell and all these guys, and like Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell, they're all going to be some of the highest paid players at their position, when they sign their contracts. So like the Lions are willing to give out money, right? And if you're willing to give out money, I don't know. I mean, you're not like the what was that guy's name in that Christmas movie? Scrooge. It's the Christmas movie with Scrooge. Oh, Mr. Cratchit, right? Mr. Cratchit's job in A Christmas Carol is to like fucking nickel and dime Scrooge's books, right? And Scrooge won't even let him go get like a Christmas goose or whatever it was, right? So like that's Scrooge is the Cincinnati Bengals. Scrooge is the Arizona Cardinals. And like the Detroit Lions just want to go get a Christmas goose and they, or whatever. That's who they are. They want to spend the money. So like I don't think they care about 4 or 5 players game checks when you don't, in the last game of the season. You have to give them the game checks anyways. The Bengals are really about to Scooble this Henderson thing up. We could be so dumb, right? The Scooble thing is ridiculous. Just pay the dude $500 million over 10 years or whatever. Defer a bunch of it. Who cares? Many rich people are actually quite dumb, and they are just enough up the ladder that they keep accumulating. That's true. We've seen that during COVID. Like the rich got richer and the poor got poorer during COVID. And that's because rich people understand how to make money and can exploit people like us. All of rich people's money, all the money ever, comes from us, the bottom X% of society, the bottom 98%, right? That's why it's called the top 1%. Like when you talk about billionaires, it's because they have figured out how to get so much of our money. We have the most money. It's just that whether it's Brian or Joseph or Detroit Fan Man or other people, I would argue that if you are rich, you have people, and we're straying from football here a little bit, but like you have people who inherit. You have people that inherit money, like Donald Trump comes from inherited wealth, like Tucker Carlson. Like he got his first job in broadcasting because his father knew somebody from like it's nepotism, right? Like, and that's I don't have a problem with nepotism. Like it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's like an axiom that's been proven correct in my experience, like time and time again. Like it's about who's going to give you an opportunity, right? And so whether you inherited your money or whether you inherited your job, or you were given your job over more qualified people because of who you know, like that is how the world works, for better or for worse. That's how the world works. And I don't typically get upset about that kind of stuff. Here's what I get upset about. I get upset about when someone who has more money than I will, like, so in my life, I might accumulate $2 million worth of stuff. If you added up my houses and all my cars and like that I've had over the let's call it 60 years of being an adult, and my pay stubs and every dollar that's come into my possession, like I think ethics and politics play a pretty big role in how we're able to make money. I mean, like otherwise, like congressmen being able to basically do insider trading would not be such a big thing, and it's a pretty big thing, right? And that's ethics and politics. Politicians take part in like the political process, and I think that they have like their ethics have dictated that they've loosened restrictions on being able to like make money based on like their jobs or whatever when they are supposed to be our public servants. So it's unethical that they make this amount of money and like they are building wealth, not just getting rich. So, but then you have like the other people, not in the political realm, like in the business realm. So somebody like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, even like a Mark Zuckerberg, right? Who have what they have done well is that they have created space for advertising. Like Facebook created a lot of space on the internet, like because attention is the new currency in the world, or at least in our culture. So yeah, and so like I do agree with this. Like, I mean, the Kennedys and Carlsons play the same dirty games with their advantages, but they are not the same, but they are all not like us, right? So like very Kendrick Lamar type of philosophy here, right? They're not like us. They're not like us. Well, the dollar is crashing as we speak. But this is something that Donald Trump has done several times already in his first year. So this is so Donald Trump, whatever you feel about him, like this is his playbook, right? So Donald Trump is using tariffs as a tactic to force people, whoever it is, to come to the table to bargain with him, right? So this is the playbook. He will announce a tariff, right? So on whatever. Let's say it's Canada, right? He says, I'm gonna put tariffs on imports, whatever imports from Canada. And then the stock market goes down, right? Because people are unsure of what that's going to mean for the economy. And so then people with money, so all the people that we've talked about, whether they're politicians or business leaders or people with inherited wealth, will now go and acquire those things because they are less expensive. And so then what he will do is after the price goes down, he will back off, right? He just did this in Switzerland this week, right? So the stock market went down like 100 points. I'm sure that a bunch of people with money who can acquire those stocks went in and bought those stocks. And now he has backed off. And he says, he put out a release that said, we have a framework for a deal on Greenland, right? So now there's nothing to be worried about. Now there's something to be hopeful about. And since the stock market is largely based on emotion as opposed to like math or logic or whatever, we have removed the thing that has caused people to sell and replaced it with something that makes people want to buy. And the price has been depressed. So then now the thing that you paid $10 for is worth $12, but if you bought $100 million worth of stock, you are really doing it. So, and like he has done this every 2 months in the first year that he's been in president again. Yeah. So Greenspan said the stock market was irrational exuberance, but like the stock market has always behaved that way. The stock market has always been about like, I'm acquiring this thing because I think it will be better in the future, right? And that is just the definition of hope, right? Like I'm hoping this thing becomes better. So I will give you money right now, and you person need my money right now for whatever it is you need it for. And then if I'm right and this thing becomes more valuable, whether it's because there's less of it or the demand for it goes up, then the price of this will then go up. Thank you. What is it? Adam. Oh man, it's been a minute. The invisible hand, Adam somebody. And the price for this will go up and I will make all the money back that I spent for it and then some, right? And so it's not real in the sense that like, but what would real look like? The only thing that makes anything worth anything ever is that how much someone wanted it, right? So like if our wants and desires could be given a monetary number. So like, and I think a good way to look at this is like what PFF tries to do, right? PFF tries to put a number on how well somebody played, but like how well somebody played is completely subjective. Like how much somebody wants something, whether it's Greenland or stocks or a commodity of some kind, is completely subjective. So there's no good way to put like a finite not like objective thing like a price on something that is entirely subjective. Those two things are counterintuitive. So like the stock market can and will and has always been not real, because our wants and needs and desires for things are not real. They're not tangible. I can't hold them. And like how much you want something compared to how much I want that same thing cannot be compared outside of what we're tangibly willing to give up for it, right? I would hope that if we are not openly manipulating markets, that makes it a federal crime they are conspiring to commit. That, of course, they are openly manipulating the market. That is what the tariff threat is every time that he uses it. It's just a very effective tool, right? So like he's manipulating the market by saying like, I'm going to make, so like when he put a tariff is a tax, right? It's a tax on us, our businesses, our people, when we acquire things from other countries, right? And we do that so that we will, the government does that so that we will then buy similar products from American-based companies, right? Well, I agree that it's based on a worse philosophy because we have an absolute moron running it, and like I say that not because what Trump is doing is effective, but like what he is doing and who it's effective for is not you and me, because we cannot take advantage of what the market is doing, right? I cannot go, and I do not have access to the information of what he's going to do in advance. I do not have advanced understanding of how it's going to affect me domestically or somebody else in a foreign country. And I do not have the financial means to take advantage of those things if I did have the advanced knowledge of it. So the people who are work in the government so that they have the advanced knowledge of what is going to happen and who it's going to affect. And then they also have the ability to go and acquire the financial wherewithal and resources to continue to like perpetuate this system of enriching themselves, right? Now, whether you're a Democrat doing that or a Republican doing it, if you're doing it, it doesn't matter what your politics are. You're hurting us. You're hurting the people that have 9-to-5 jobs. Whether you make $30,000 a year, $60,000 a year, six figures, whatever, you are hurting us because we do not exist in the same realm of wealth and opportunity that you do. Right. I mean, and like, I do believe that Brian has hit the nose on the head here. They don't care if the system works as long as they can't see their toes over their wallets, right? So like, basically, one thing that I think that every American voter should look at with more diligence is, are the people that I am voting for, especially the ones who have been in office at least once for one term, have they gone about and done that? And like, there are platforms now, especially there's one in particular that like allows you as an investor to follow the same kind of financial moves that other like politicians have made. So you can like, it's an app, I don't know what it's called, but like you can go to this app and you can select a politician and then you can sign up to follow, like buy the same stocks, sell at the same times that this politician does, and basically allow you to a degree to mirror the buying and selling practices on the stock market of these politicians. And it's a way that we can at least get our foot in the door to what they are doing, because they have to disclose it publicly. So there's that. But like, if I'm spending $1 and $5 bills, and you're spending thousands and tens of thousands, like it's just not, we will never catch up, right? So if, as a voter, I'm an election worker, so like at least in my county in Michigan, I know how voting works more so than somebody who has not been a part of that process, right? So like at my job, and I should probably wrap up here pretty soon, but like at my job, I have told people that I'm an election worker, and they have asked me, like, the question I get most is like, tell me how people are abusing the system, and I'm like, they're not. You can't. So, and they're like, well, what do you mean? Like any voting machine can be hacked. And I'm like, ours in Kalamazoo County, Michigan, where I'm from, they can't be hacked because they're not on the internet. So, and they're like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. So like depending on where you live. So if you're in a different county, this may not apply to you. Where I live, we have a paper and electronic backup that has to match vote for vote. And if it doesn't match, you can't leave, right? And we have a card carrying Republican and a card carrying Democrat every election go over those. I don't remember why I'm talking about this, but like go over those results and prove that they match. And like one of the funniest things that happens at the end of every election, whether it's for president or the midterms or just like your normal like run-of-the-mill local like millages or whatever, is that you always have write-in candidates. Like people can say like who they want to be the president, or let's use that, like whoever's gonna like who they want to be the president. Do you know who the number one write-in candidate was in the nation and at my precinct in the presidential election where Donald Trump was elected president? Do you have any guesses? I'll tell you. It's Donald Trump. People don't even know how to vote on the the ballots that were given to them. So they just wrote in the guy that they wanted to win, which was Donald Trump. And he did win, And so I remember. If you want to punish the people who use getting elected to get rich, then you should follow as to whether or not how they're trading. And then if they are trading and making a lot of money, you should vote them out. You should vote for the people running against them so that they will not have access to it anymore. Yes, right-wing propaganda poisoning the minds. Remember advertising works. Well, advertising does work, but I think the problem with advertising that I'm dealing with right now is that I'm either listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video or something most of the time that I'm awake, right? Like I'm either on social media, listening to a podcast, or watching a video. I am being entertained every waking moment of my life, and probably from this time out, right? Like when I was in college 20 years ago, that wasn't that way. Like I would get up and I would go to class and I would interact with people. And yeah, I would come back to my dorm room and play video games for way too long. But like I would talk to girls and I would go and I would spend time with friends and we would go and do stuff. And like I don't need that anymore because I get the dopamine button in my head pushed every time I listen to something about the Lions or I watch something about Magic the Gathering, or if I look at a pretty girl on the internet, like on social media, I get that dopamine release. I don't need to go talk to people or anything anymore. So like advertising in that sense, the algorithm, right? That does work. And like I think the thing that we're going to have to address as like a culture in the near term is you're going to have to address who's in charge of the algorithm, who can make changes to it, to what degree can you make changes to it. And like I wouldn't be surprised if we have legislation akin to like smoking causes cancer, and we are going to have the algorithm causes addiction, like because I can't put my phone down. I mean, like my phone's in my hand, in my pocket, on all day long. Advertising works or it wouldn't be funded. The first sales pitch American Swallow is, you're too smart to fall for tricks. Like some of the advertising that like I see, especially like on YouTube, is the most bait and switch, blatant. Like, so one of the one of the things that I absolutely can't stand is like when I get a an advertisement for like the bearskin tactical hoodie. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I don't pay to get rid of ads on any of the stuff that I have, all the streaming services or YouTube. And so one of the things that gets constantly advertised to me is this fucking bearskin tactical hoodie. And first of all, it's for chodes, in my opinion, who think of themselves as like Spartan warriors back in the day. And if you put the word tactical or like military grade on just a regular hoodie, they're gonna think that like they're gonna it's worth something to them. And I'm like, I eventually watched the entire 2-minute ad, and it was like, this is a hoodie with more pockets, and like it's gonna work on somebody. Like there's people out there buying this nonsense. And I'm like, it's not bearskin. You're not raising bears, and shearing them like sheep in order to make hoodies out of this stuff. Open for a coronal mass injection to take out the cell. Oh, oh. Ah, that's it, Joseph. You guys have any idea how many satellites there are up there? Oh shit! I almost peed my pants. Oh no, rats. How many satellites are there orbiting the Earth?
There are over 10,000 active satellites orbiting Earth, and the total number of objects, including inactive ones, could be nearly 15,000. This is partly due to the growth of satellite groups like Starlink.
That's Elon Musk, by the way. I'm pretty sure. Let me just find out. Who owns Starlink?
Starlink is owned by SpaceX, an aerospace company founded by Elon Musk.
Yeah, I hate Elon Musk. BT Dub. Sorry if you don't agree with me politically, I would understand. But he's a fucking Nazi and a white supremacist, and I just don't have any patience for it. So, we're going to run out of space. I mean, like the planet's enormous, right? Like I don't think we really understand just how big the planet is. But we're going to run. I mean, there's 15,000 bits of shit up there already. I mean, like if you make a sphere and you just equally distribute 15,000 things in it, that's a lot. I mean, like I would imagine that the space is drying up relatively quickly. Anyways, I gotta go to work. So the Lions have a new OC. It could work out great. If it works out, that's wonderful, and the Lions will probably get better. Interesting. Brian, I think that you and I could have a wonderful book club together. If it doesn't work out, I don't think that means that the Lions have to get rid of Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes or change things up. I just don't think that I just think that it's very difficult to get from where the Lions are now to the next tier of teams that can like effectively challenge for Super Bowls. So I'm hopeful, but this is not the decision I would have made. But I am hopeful about what this could mean for the Detroit Lions. And I think one of the things that makes me not as hopeful is that like I feel like they said the same things about John Morton. And so I'm like, oh, okay, like are we running it back again? Or is it that kind of thing? Or is it like, no, the process that they have is good, and they got it right this time, like, I don't know. So anyways, great talk today, guys. We went way longer and talked about stuff that we never talk about on the show before. We need is a theory each season is that the team is learning from it. I mean, the proof is going to be in the results. Like, I've heard that, like, results based thinking is not something that people want to do. But I'm also like, if you're not judging, you're welcome, Joseph. But if you're not judging your process based upon what it's achieving, then I don't know how you can effectively figure out whether or not it's working, So there's that. So anyways, I hope you guys stay safe. It's quite snowy out. And I spent an hour talking with you more than I thought I was going to. So I didn't shovel my driveway. So that's going to be a real fun time getting back in and out this morning. Good point. So anyways, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay warm, and I will be back here tomorrow at noon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.